Finally, war broke out after a series of escalating tensions that had been building for weeks. Like most wars, it started with a few small casualties, then stretched on for years and turned into a large-scale massacre. However, this was not a war as we commonly know it. It was not waged by humans, but by chimpanzees. More specifically, by the chimpanzees in Gombe National Park, Tanzania. Chaco had once been a large chimpanzee community living peacefully for many years. But in 1973, a few individuals broke away from the group and formed a new community known as Kahama. They planned to take over the territory of the old group, but this scheme failed and ended in a bloodbath when Chaco completely wiped out 6 dominant members of the Kahama group and defended their territory fully. This event stunned scientists, who realized that our close relatives also understand the workings of war in a complex society where there are systems. A clear hierarchy in the conflict shows that many violent behaviors and cunning tactics emerged, all aimed at achieving a final goal. Chimpanzees do not act purely on instinct. They are aware of their thoughts. It can be said that war, with such calculation, demonstrates a superior behavioral capacity compared to what humans know about chimpanzees. Along with this, many other discoveries related to biological structure, evolution, and the development of the brain across eras have raised a question for humans. Are we still, in some way, monkeys? Before we dive into the main content, please support the creators of this video by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for choosing to join tonight. We'll begin right now. And there's one more very important thing to note. In the first episode, we agreed that this series is based on the theory of evolution, where this world is stuck in time, each organism starting from being just a cell. The simplest idea is that, as the most intelligent and complex organisms develop, they are all trapped in forms that have never changed since the dawn of creation. This idea is hard to believe. From a young age, we are taught that Earth is a dynamic planet, where every second, everything changes, even for humans. With all our superior technological power, we cannot escape this influence. Over the course of 1,000,000 years, the world has witnessed the rise and fall of at least 7 different human species, with Homo sapiens being the final victor. However, before the 19th century, the majority of people believed they were living in an immutable world, where life was always enduring and unshaken since its formation. But when the revolution that changed our perception of life on Earth took place, everything changed. In the tropics of Malaysia, this man was immersed in research to find an answer to a question that the entire world hadn't even considered. He developed a theory regarding how species evolve over time under the influence of environmental pressure over many years, led him to call this process of impact and change natural selection. The great mind we're talking about is not Charles Darwin, but Alfred Russel Wallace, an independent thinker who developed the concept of human evolution alongside Darwin. Thanks to Wallace, we learned that humans have always been an integral part of the animal world, from prehistoric times to the present. In his book, The Descent of Man in 1871, Darwin presented an even more radical argument. He declared that humans and many other primates not only evolved from the same ancestor, but also shared many traits, from physical characteristics to behavior and even thought. But is this accurate? Most people in the 1870s had never seen a large primate that wasn't human. But for those who traveled the world like Darwin, recognizing similarities wasn't difficult. Perhaps the most noticeable similarity is the expression of emotions on the face. Yes, using the face to expressing emotions may seem simple, but not all species are capable of doing it. Primates, including humans, are part of a group of organisms that can use their faces to express how they are feeling. One only needs to observe a group of primates for a short period of time to notice the various expressions they use daily: happiness, joy, anger, surprise, and pain. These emotions appear through movements in their faces, reflecting a high degree of adaptation to living in complex social groups where communication is key. Humans are not something new to the world, but rather are separate and evolved from distant ancestors. Scientifically, humans are still part of the primate group, and thus we are relatively similar to them. Wallace and Darwin had never fully addressed the questions surrounding this, despite many breakthroughs in the knowledge of human origins. It wasn't until the 20th century, when it was officially recognized by the scientific community, that they began to search for the missing link, an extinct species that lies somewhere between our ancestors and today's humans. Such a species are believed to have existed on the Eurasian continent, with a larger brain than that of monkeys, yet still retaining features adapted to life in the trees. In 1924, Raymond D., an Australian anatomist working at a university, noticed a special package from a quarry. Inside, there were some unclear fossilized remains, carefully wrapped. This specimen belonged to Australopithecus africanus. Before this, many scientists held the view that a larger brain was the first step in distinguishing us from other species. The brain was thought to have evolved earliest compared to any other trait. However, the recently discovered fossil reveals a creature with a small brain, but teeth resembling those of modern humans, as well as an upright posture. Moreover, the larynx model from the specimen suggests that this creature could have been capable of speech. Therefore, even with a small brain, it demonstrated a complexity in behavior and cognition that was not inferior. This strongly supports the idea that the cognitive evolutionary process has indeed been a long, selective one, unfolding over millions of years. Millions of years ago, many quickly began to think of this specimen as the missing link, reinforcing the theory of evolution. Although now we know that this belief was misplaced, this discovery still plays an important role in uncovering our evolutionary journey. Evolution is a long path, seemingly without end. Many still wonder how far we've come on this path, and how much of our awareness still remains in the ancient savannas of Africa. At dawn in the tropical forest, light pierces the morning mist, casting its glow on golden fur still undisturbed. Compared to most other primates, it's easy to understand why the Meriki is considered unique. This large-bellied, long-tailed primate leads an incredibly peaceful, harmonious life, with very little violence. Even mates are shared within the community. This is quite puzzling in a world where food is always scarce, and where most primates fight for exclusive rights to resources. Thus, the behavior of the Meriki is truly a mystery. An American anthropologist who has studied this strange species since the 1980s quickly realized that the society of the Meriki is similar to human society in many aspects. Here, the offspring are equal to the males and are considered important members of the community. Even when old and no longer capable of reproduction, there is almost no sign of violence or competition within the group, particularly in terms of accessing mates. In this sense, Merikis are even more peaceful than humans. Their complex social life suggests higher cognitive abilities, yet their brains are not superior to those of other primates in the same area. This again reinforces the idea that a large brain is not the most important characteristic in the process of evolution. You may be surprised by the anatomical and behavioral similarities between other primates and humans. As seen in the examples, the fact that we share a common ancestor with them is further emphasized. However, the evolutionary paths of us and these primates are completely different. They are not a less evolved species. It turns out that we did not evolve from chimpanzees or gorillas. Scientists have calculated that the great apes of the world diverged from our common ancestors around 40 million years ago. These evolutionary cousins are gradually revealing to us the true history of their behavior and abilities, which cannot be underestimated. After tens of millions of years of development, it may be that we are not as uniquely superior as we have always thought, aside from our unusually large brains in relation to our bodies. However, there is an undeniable fact. The larger the brain of an animal in relation to its body size, the more likely it is to be intelligent. Let me emphasize that it's more likely, not always. Size is not the deciding factor. The complex structures inside the brain play the most important role. This fact has posed a challenging question for researchers. How did the human brain develop into such a remarkable organ? What drove primates to develop more complex and massive brains compared to other species? In the animal kingdom, has our behavior and thinking today been influenced by this process? The first primates did not seem to have large brains. Indeed, many researchers have compared them to species from the lemur family still living today. These lemurs belong to one of the oldest surviving primate species and provide valuable insights into the early evolutionary process of the primate brain. The brains of lemur primates are smaller and simpler than those of larger primates, but they still show superiority over their distant ancestors. This proves that they have always been evolving. While the brains of primates have developed over time, only humans have achieved such incredible success. This difference may not come from the brain itself as we thought, but perhaps 25 million years ago, we were already being prepared for something greater. The bright light of ancient tropical forests is home to certain exemplary primates. The primates, living in the trees, move back and forth with ease like experts, perfectly adapted to their environment. Some of the earliest known populations thrived in the tropical forests of Africa during the Miocene. They had larger brains than the species that existed prior to that period, but this is not the greatest link between them and us today. These species exhibit superior behavioral abilities compared to their ancestors, and even more remarkably, they display many human-like qualities. These traits seem to suggest the beginning of an extraordinary evolutionary journey, preparing to unfold over millions of years. The first primates began to develop larger and more complex brains. Their dependence on a primary food source, possibly fruit, played an important role in driving this process. Since fruit is often dispersed and seasonally available, animals had to remember and move to specific locations at different times. But it didn't stop there. As the brain developed further, the climate began to environmental changes. A series of changes to the environment gradually caused tropical forests to disappear, replaced by the vast savanna grasslands of wild Africa. Some species followed the reduction in forested areas deep inside, evolving into the primates we know today. However, a few species chose a different path. Environmental changes served as a premise for the evolution of a species capable of living in both forested areas and savanna grasslands. Look at this skull. It has a volume of only 167.7 cubic centimeters, while the skull of Australopithecus living in East Africa is 3 times that size. But it existed earlier than Australopithecus and was closer to our ancestors. The difference in Sahelanthropus from 7 million years ago is a perfect example of the relationship between habitat and brain development. The savanna grassland environment may have provided an evolutionary advantage, particularly in adapting to the changing landscape. A curious fact is that the brain structure of Sahelanthropus has a frontal lobe configuration similar to that of modern humans. It gives us the basis for reasoning that they might have been bipedal animals. More specifically, Sahelanthropus could even be the earliest species in the human branch of the evolutionary tree. The ability to stand upright on two legs is immensely significant. It freed the forelimbs of primates, allowing them to manipulate objects with greater dexterity, laying the foundation for later species to learn how to use tools. Homo sapiens has exploited this advantage perfectly to match the cognitive development of the brain. Homo sapiens has also reached the peak of optimizing the brain compared to any other creature on Earth, along with dexterous hands. This foreshadows the emergence of complex cognitive behaviors, including abstract thinking, language, and problem-solving skills. When we look into the eyes of a chimpanzee like Sahelanthropus, we see a reflection of ourselves, traces of a journey that began millions of years ago. However, underestimating our evolutionary relatives is a serious mistake. This underestimation is a huge mistake. The more we study and learn, the more we realize that we are not as superior or different as we thought. Imagine you are wandering in the forest edge beside the African savanna. A chimpanzee is crossing the branches above your head. One hand grips a branch high above to maintain balance, while the other holds a sharp spear. He is a hunter, and in the distance, he has a group of companions following him. Under the deadly silence, it's not hard to figure out what is about to happen when he strikes a lethal blow, killing the prey. This extraordinary moment is so precise that you can almost feel your own breath quickening, yet it seems unnoticed because in just a few seconds, a small, bloodied chunk of fur is pulled out, and the whole scene is filled with sounds like these. The companions of the hunter let out excited and ear-piercing cries. Their friends and families do the same. In their society, a successful hunt will make the entire community celebrate, as everyone participates and benefits from the spoils. The hunter grips the prey tightly in his hands, while the other members are ready to divide the spoils. But at this moment, within him, a battle takes place between instinct and reason. His instincts tell him that this is his personal spoil and that he needs to protect it with everything he has. However, reason points out that he has strong relationships with the individuals standing around him, those who have shared their spoils with him in the past. If he goes against this now, they might isolate him, and there will certainly be no sharing in the future. After an internal struggle, he decides to allow each individual in the community to take a share of the spoils, while reserving a special portion for the senior members of the group. Of course, the resources are limited, and when only a portion of meat remains for himself, he defends it fiercely, ensuring no one has the chance to touch it. In human society, sharing is not rare, but for chimpanzees, sharing food, especially valuable food like this, is not about showing generosity or nobility. But this falls under political dynamics. The hunter learns the hunting techniques from his community, and one day he may wish to establish his own group. Meat serves as the foundation for building closer relationships with individuals in the community in order to gain recognition. The previous example is a clear illustration of intelligence. The concept of Machiavellian was first proposed by the Dutch researcher Frans de Waal in 1982. This idea clearly shows that even seemingly altruistic actions in chimpanzee society can be driven by personal interests and the need for dominance. This hypothesis even goes further to argue that the need for dominance has driven a significant increase in brain size. With a larger brain and more dexterous hands, it is not surprising that chimpanzees use both advantages in tool-making and use. In 2007, anthropologists directly observed a specific situation in a chimpanzee group originating from the southeastern savanna Senegal, with temperatures regularly reaching 40 degrees Celsius and a dry season lasting up to 7 months each year, presents a challenging environment for survival. Yet, most of this vast open savanna is where our human ancestors evolved in the past. This is also why there is a particular interest in studying chimpanzees. They not only live in an environment similar to that of our ancestors, but are also among the most skilled tool users in the natural world. For these chimpanzees, they can use a variety of tools for different purposes. They use heavy tools to crack hard-shelled nuts, sticks to extract insects, toothpicks to clean their teeth, and what makes them even more remarkable is that they are known as one of the rare non-human primate populations that frequently use tools to forage for food. A notable example is in 2011 when a group of researchers from the University of Louvain and the University of Iowa reported that wild chimpanzees from Bandafassi, Senegal, know how to use tools to digging for food underground, a behavior that was previously observed in non-human animals like bears from Serra da Capivara National Park in Brazil, has now been found to be practiced by wild chimpanzees. This is significant because this behavior was once considered unique to great apes, a species thought to have helped humans and our distant ancestors separate from other primates. In a recent study, scientists explored how chimpanzees use and select tools in captivity to better understand how tool-assisted food-digging behavior might develop. They observed a group of 10 chimpanzees living on an island at the Kristiansand Zoo in Norway. 8 of them were born in captivity, and none of them had previously exhibited food-digging behavior. The researchers dug 5 small holes and placed fruit in each hole, initially leaving the holes open for the chimpanzees to approach the locations containing the fruit, and then they filled each hole and provided tools to dig for food. Among the 10 chimpanzees, some successfully dug up the fruit buried underground at least once. Even some of the chimpanzees that were not provided tools managed to dig with tools they found. The researchers also observed that the chimpanzees reused specific tools and even selected longer tools for food-digging behavior. Most surprisingly, the researchers saw the chimpanzees taking turns digging a hole and even sharing the fruit after it had been dug up. Thanks to advances in science, we now know that chimpanzees and bonobos are our closest evolutionary relatives, so it seems entirely reasonable to assume that many behaviors present in humans can also be found in chimpanzees and bonobos. Pioneering research over the past half-century has revealed some aspects of chimpanzee behavior that were previously unknown. According to scientists, through long-term field studies on chimpanzee communities since the 1960s, knowing that our relatives can do much more than we previously thought in chimpanzee communities, beyond making and using tools, they also have a rich and complex social life, much like the most extroverted humans. They form long-lasting, loyal friendships, political alliances, and tight bonds with their families. It's not hard to find chimpanzees spending hours grooming, touching each other, and caring for weaker, less fortunate individuals. Moreover, they have a complex communication system with a remarkable vocabulary of gestures and distinctive sounds that we have only recently begun to decipher. In summary, we have a picture of chimpanzees as master tool users, capable of sharing their spoils with others and holding political calculations in their actions. Do you still think they are far inferior to humans? Or, from another perspective, could it be that we still carry something similar to these relatives? All these amazing facts. This is just a small chapter in the chronicle of chimpanzee society, beginning from the time we started conducting field studies on various populations. However, it doesn't stop there. During the course of the research, scientists unintentionally discovered a particularly remarkable event, an event that strongly reflects the human-like traits within a species that is entirely non-human. The event I am referring to is the prolonged 4-year war between two chimpanzee communities. This chimpanzee war, which began in 1974 and lasted until 1978, unfolded as an intense and unyielding conflict between two chimpanzee troops in Gombe National Park, Tanzania. The parties involved in the conflict were the Chaco troop and the Kahama troop, each controlling the northern and southern parts of the park, respectively. These two troops had previously lived together as a single group. However, in 1974, the researcher Judo, who was observing this community, noticed a distinct division in the living areas of the chimpanzees, with one group occupying the north and the other the south. Computer analyses and Judo's records later revealed a societal rift between the two chimpanzee troops. Since the beginning of 1971, the Kahama troop resided in the southern part of the park, consisting of 6 adult males, 3 females, and their offspring. In contrast, the larger Chaco troop included 12 adult females, along with their young and juveniles. The first signs of conflict emerged on January 7, 1974, when 6 adult males from Chaco attacked and killed Gaudi, a young male chimpanzee from Kahama who was eating on a tree. This marked the first time humans witnessed a deliberate killing among chimpanzees. In the following year, all 6 adult males from Kahama were killed by the adult males of Chaco. Of the females in Kahama, 1 was killed, 2 went missing, and 3 were beaten and abducted by the Chaco troop. After this attack, Chaco emerged victorious, seizing Kahama's territory. However, this victory was short-lived, as Kahama retreated and sought to reclaim the newly acquired land of Chaco. Now, Chaco found itself facing a territorial battle with another chimpanzee troop known as Kand, which posed a threat due to its superior strength. The size of the Kalanda troop, along with numerous confrontations along Chaco's territory, quickly led to the surrender of large portions of their land. The war erupted, leaving Jane Goodall both surprised and shocked, as she had previously regarded chimpanzees as having relatively more orderly behavior compared to humans. However, observations in 1975, when a higher-ranking female within the troop killed a newborn member of their species, revealed a darker side to their nature. The bloody events of the Gombe War exposed a side of chimpanzee behavior that had never been seen before. Goodall was deeply disturbed by this discovery. In her memoir, she wrote, "For many years, I struggled to reconcile this new knowledge. Every time I awoke during the night, those horrifying images would flood my mind. One of these images was of a chimpanzee named Satan, who bent down beneath Sniff's chin to drink the blood pouring from a deep wound on his face. Another chimpanzee, Rudolph, typically gentle, stood upright and threw a large rock at the decaying body of another. Romeo, driven by rage, tore a piece of flesh from Fan's thigh, relentlessly striking the lifeless body. The injuries and trembling of Goliath, one of the early heroes of his troop, are among the most unforgettable images when Goodall reported the events of the Gombe War. Many were skeptical of her accounts of a natural war among chimpanzees at that time. The scientific models of human and animal behavior had rarely aligned. Some scientists accused Goodall of anthropomorphizing, while others believed that her presence and her experiments with captive chimpanzees had sparked violent conflict in what would have otherwise been a peaceful natural society. However, later studies using less intrusive methods proved that chimpanzee societies in the wild do, in fact, experience wars over power. The brutal and calculating social behaviors of the two chimpanzee troops have given us a deeper understanding of our own nature and the evolutionary influences that have shaped our behaviors and cognition. After all, humans are not uniquely special. As Wace and Darwin pointed out more than a century ago, humans share common ancestry with other primates. 7 million years ago, humans diverged from our relatives, including gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans. Despite following separate evolutionary paths, our brains retained many significant features from our ancestors. Shared traits in brain anatomy, intelligence, behavioral cognition, and ultimately survival instincts have remained with us. Is it too far-fetched to say that humans still carry a part of the wild within us from our ancestors? This video will give you a new perspective on our closest relatives in nature, and even on ourselves. Will humans ever fully separate from this wild part of us? In the next video, we'll tackle another extremely important issue in human evolutionary history. Be sure to tune in at our usual time slots. For now, I'm Tam J. Ki V Kwong. Goodbye and see you in the next videos. Wishing everyone a wonderful day.